A new poll just came out from Iowa. This is the long-awaited Siena College New York Times poll, and Bernie Sanders is leading at number 1, and he has a strong lead. Let's take a look. So you can see here Bernie Sanders leading the pack at 25%. Runner-up is Booty Juggalo at 18%, Biden at 17%, and Warren at 15% in fourth place. So it's very interesting here because the last time we had a poll from Iowa was actually a while ago. It's from October. Okay, and this is so far the only reliable one we have. And it's important to look at this because the Iowa caucus is in a week. The primaries are upon us, and Iowa is one of the most important states. So it is really, really a good time for Bernie Sanders to have this momentum, okay? Elizabeth Warren used to be in first place. She no longer is. You see, that's why the polls that come out 2 months ago, 3 months ago, they don't really mean that much. You get a better, more reflective, accurate picture of the situation on the ground with polls that come out just before people actually go to the polls and vote. And so 1 week before the caucus, yeah, we're looking pretty good. We're looking high. 25%. It's a solid lead because he's 7 points ahead of the runner-up. It's not like Bernie Sanders is neck and neck with someone else. Okay, so those are two very important points right there. This is part of a broader, larger trend. You know, Bernie Sanders is leading nationally now. He's tied with Joe Biden, front runner in the polls nationally. And he's also first in New Hampshire, and now he's first in Iowa. This is good. So again, this is part of a larger trend where all the news networks are having to admit now that Bernie Sanders is rising. He has momentum at the right time, at the crucial time, right when the primaries are about to start, right on the cusp of the primary. And it's really satisfying to watch CNN and MSNBC, MSNBC not so much, but, you know, Fox News even admitting that, yeah, Bernie Sanders is doing really well. Well, look at that. It turns out the socialist is pretty well liked. How about that, huh? And another thing that we should point out is that this wasn't the situation before. So let's look at the poll from 2 months ago, from October. You'll see it was a very different situation. So you had Elizabeth Warren leading the pack at 22%, and now she's dropped all the way back down to 15%. Buttigieg actually stayed exactly where he was. He had 18% in October, and now 18% again in January. Even though in the meantime, you had a lot of quicker polls coming out saying that he was first, he was leading in Iowa. Well, you know, that's no longer the case now. And for Biden, he also stayed exactly at 17%. So there you go. But they definitely shifted in the rankings. So this so-called front runner, Joe Biden, yeah, well, he's not front running in Iowa after all, is he? He's in third place now. And Buttigieg is stuck right where he was at 18%, albeit in second place now, but still nowhere near first place with Bernie's 25%. As you guys remember, there was a period of time, you know, around fall where Elizabeth Warren was really doing great. You know, she was like, we just saw first place in some polls, and nationally she was like in second place, running up to Biden. And people thought that, oh my God, here she comes. She's going to steal Bernard Sanders' thunder. Elizabeth Warren is the face of the progressive movement. Watch out. Yeah, okay. After she released her Medicare for All stuff and, you know, she dipped in the polls. Well, we're seeing the results now. And it's actually really substantial that she went from first to fourth place. That's really not good. It's actually something similar happened with the fundraising, right? She came in like fourth place in the last quarter of 2019. It's not doing well, man. I would consider the fundraising to be much more substantial than polls. Polls don't have any tangible effect on the ground, but money raised does. And seeing her come in fourth place with fundraising last quarter, yeah, that's really not where you want to be, okay? Anyway, so back to this poll, you know, it's really interesting that she went from 22% to 15%. Now, what some people might suggest is that the reason this happened is you have some voters defecting to Bernie Sanders, right? And some going to Amy Klobuchar because she's another woman in the race. Although Elizabeth Warren is allegedly supporting Medicare for all and free college, and Klobuchar does not. So, I don't know. Then again, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of Warren voters who are supporting her solely based on identity politics, because I covered a clip back from, I don't know, was it September, October? Emma Vigeland, she was interviewing Warren supporters at a rally, and they were giving the most underwhelming answers possible. I mean, just, basically supporting her because she's a woman. Okay, that's wonderful, but where's the substance on policy? None to be found. So not everyone is like that, but we saw a good chunk of people like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people who are going to Amy Klobuchar for some reason, just because she's also a woman. And you can actually see that Amy Klobuchar doubled her figures, right? Okay, it's 8% now, is nothing that special, but still, from 4% in October up to 8% 1 week before the Iowa caucus, yeah, you could consider that impressive. And you could also calculate that some of that support was taken away. A chunk of that came from Elizabeth Warren. Sure, why not? The most impressive thing here is that Bernie Sanders is in first place, and not just like with a little bit of a lead. No, he's way ahead, okay? And I have a feeling that that is the real situation on the ground, and that's what we're going to see next week in Iowa. I don't know if Bernie Sanders is going to win. This whole DNC shenanigans with eliminating the superdelegates at the first round of voting, but not at the second one. I mean, it's really egregious. It really pains me to read about this stuff, hear about this stuff, deal with this stuff. It's horrible, okay? I don't understand why these people are still here. It's like Ron Placone said once on Jimmy Dore's show. These people, the superdelegates, shouldn't be at the table. It's just like when you're discussing Medicare for all. We don't want healthcare executives from the private sector at the table. They don't belong at the table. They should be completely removed and excluded from any agreements going forward. They're malicious actors. They have no role to play. They shouldn't be at the table, okay? Perfectly on point what Ron Placone said. And that's exactly the same sentiment here, okay? So with the superdelegates, who wants them at the table? They shouldn't be there, whether it's the first round or the second round or the 15th round of voting. They don't belong there. The whole premise of having superdelegates is completely undemocratic. It's really astounding that the Democrats have this stuff, and the Republicans don't. Like, I mean, what does that tell you about how the Democrats take democracy? Unbelievable. So anyway, I'm a bit worried that the vote could be fractured enough to the point where, Bernie Sanders doesn't make it on his own in the first round of voting, and then it goes to the second round, and you have these disgusting, conniving, malfeasant superdelegates getting involved. And it's back to the same BS from, 2016. Just, it really pains me to imagine that. I really hope that's not the case, though. Okay, just because Bernie Sanders is leading now at 25% in the poll doesn't mean that he's guaranteed to win Iowa like that, and that the superdelegates and the DNC won't stick their finger in the pie. So be wary of that. Be careful. But anyway, I think 1 week before the caucus, yeah, this is good news. This is good news. Let it be noted that usually, Bernie Sanders would actually like to be on the road right now campaigning in Iowa, but he can't because of the impeachment trial. So let me show you a very quick clip of him talking about that.
On Saturday, the president's legal team will make their presentation. Is there anything they could say that would change your mind?
Look, I am functioning as a jurist. I want to hear all sides. But I will tell you right now, what has upset me the most and upset the American people is, how do you have a fair trial when you don't have witnesses, when you can't get documents? What is the president? What are the Republicans hiding?
We don't get to see your colleagues during the trial. The cameras are not pointed at the senators. Take us inside. I mean, what is everybody doing?
I think it's unusual for a senator, especially somebody who's running for president. I think we have 4 or 5 of those on the floor right now. To be seated for 9 hours. It's just not the way the Senate usually works. So I think what people are trying to do is to listen as intently as they can.
Are the senators staying awake?
In most cases.
Impeachment's now going to keep you here in Washington for about 10 days and not in Iowa. Does that place you at a distinct disadvantage?
Well, let me be frank. I mean, obviously, when we had planned out our schedule, trust me, we were not planning to be in Washington this week. We had set up a number of town meetings all over the state. We usually bring out good crowds. So it is disappointing to me not to be in Iowa talking to the people there.
But don't you think it's important business?
Here? Well, of course it is, and I'm accepting my constitutional responsibility. But what I'm saying, obviously, is at a disadvantage
Do you think it places Biden at an advantage over you?
Politically in the last week or so of the campaign? Yeah, I think it does. I mean, he and others, not just Biden, are able to go out, talk to people, and that's really important.
So, yeah, Bernie Sanders and whoever else is a senator, so we're talking about Cloud Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren, are unable to campaign this week, right before the Iowa caucus, which, that's not the best thing, man. I just saw a rally yesterday where Bernie did hold a rally in Iowa, but he wasn't there. So you had Michael Moore and AOC come and stand in for him, which is the best you can do. What are you going to do? You can't just give up 100% and not do anything. That's still good. That's why you get endorsements from people like that, because they can actually literally rally people and make them come out and listen to the same message and, convince them, broadcast to them what policies Bernie Sanders is running on, how this will benefit their lives. AOC is a politician herself. Michael Moore is a very effective communicator, and of course, Nina Turner, she's the most poetic person I've ever seen, and she knows how to rile a crowd up. So I know that they're doing a good job and the best they can while Bernie Sanders is stuck in Washington, D.C. You can't help it, man. He's got to do this impeachment stuff, the impeachment trial. And some people, and this wouldn't surprise me, but some people say that Nancy Pelosi delayed sending the articles of impeachment from the House to the Senate on purpose so she could bog down Bernie Sanders 1 week before the Iowa caucus. Would that surprise you guys? I really wouldn't be that surprised. Now, some people might say, why would you go to the effort of doing that, just for Bernie Sanders? Oh, I don't know. I mean, do you really believe the DNC plays fair? You think they won't use every single trick in the book? Who knows, man? We ain't got no proof, but we do have proof that the DNC played dirty with Bernie Sanders. That we have very, very much proof of. So it would not surprise me. And I didn't come up with that. I heard that from a pundit on CNN, I think. And it doesn't surprise me, honestly. So before the primary start, we are looking good with Bernie Sanders. Now, a word of caution, because in 2016, against the juggernaut Hillary Clinton, we were also looking good, okay? It was a virtual tie in Iowa, and Bernie Sanders was neck and neck with her in so many states, and he ended up winning 23 of them, almost half the states. We were looking good back then, man. Don't get your hopes up, but, keep your fingers crossed for Bernard Sanders, and hopefully we're going to upset the establishment next week in Iowa.